Ever looked at a perfectly good tomato on your counter and then remembered your grandma swearing by storing them upside down? Genius hack or just an old wives' tale?
Huh. Yeah. Or what about those really fancy superfood snacks? Are they actually, delivering on their promises?
Exactly. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. This is where we try to sift through all that noise and bring you the real insights.
And today we're plunging into a pretty fascinating collection of consumer news and nutritional science. It's all thanks to the May 12th, 2025 edition of the news aggregator podcast, Consumers.app.
Right. We've pulled out what we think is the most crucial info to help you understand what's really going on out there.
Our mission today really is to explore the current landscape of food, nutrition, sustainability, all based on these sources.
Yeah, and figure out what it actually means for you, for your daily choices. Okay, so let's get right into it. First up, a headline from Meebelcillo, Colombia on MSN.com caught our eye.
Yes, the one about potential prohibitions on certain unhealthy products under SNAP.
That's the one. And what's immediately striking is just the sheer scale of this.
Definitely. Consumers research tells us SNAP, that's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, well, it's a huge federal initiative, supports millions of low-income Americans.
How many are we talking?
The figure mentioned was around 40 million people back in 2018. So, yeah, a really significant chunk of the population relying on this for food access.
Wow. Okay. And the question being raised now is whether there should be limits on what those SNAP benefits can actually buy.
Right. Consumers research points out there are these policy proposals floating around, things like restricting sugary drinks, junk food.
And the thinking behind that is what? Public health.
Pretty much. Improve public health outcomes, maybe reduce diet-related diseases, and, ensure taxpayer money goes towards more nutritious options. That's the rationale.
But this brings up a really interesting tension, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. On one side, you've got this clear public health goal trying to improve diets for vulnerable groups.
But on the other?
Well, it raises questions, right? How much should the government get involved in dictating food choices? What about personal autonomy?
Yeah, that's a tricky balance. And it seems these nutritional challenges can get even worse during, economic downturns.
Yeah, consumers research notes that exactly. When the economy struggles, like during the COVID-19 pandemic, nutritional deficiencies among SNAP recipients tended to worsen.
Why is that? Just less access?
Partly, yeah. Reduced access to healthier foods and also a greater reliance on less nutritious, often cheaper stuff. And it disproportionately affects women in low-income households.
So what does that tell us about the resilience of our whole food safety net?
It kind of highlights its fragility, I think. When resources get scarce, nutritious food is often one of the first things compromised for those already struggling.
Okay, so what about programs that have put restrictions on less healthy foods? What happened there?
Well, consumers research indicates there is some evidence suggesting it can lead to, eating more fruits and vegetables.
Oh, really? Any other benefits?
Yeah, potentially better health outcomes for mothers and infants. But, and this is important, they also caution that just cutting overall funding,
right,
that can create huge barriers to getting any food, let alone the healthy stuff, especially for marginalized communities. It's complex, not a simple fix at all.
Definitely a lot to weigh up there. Thinking about the direct impact, consumers research also looked at how SNAP affects the health of low-income women, infants, children, particularly in BIPOC communities.
Yeah, and what really stands out there is the critical role SNAP and similar programs like WIC play. They provide essential nutrients during really key development periods.
So there's proof it helps.
Oh, yeah. Research has shown that increased nutritional support through these programs improves health outcomes for both mothers and kids.
And the flip side, funding cuts.
Unfortunately, yeah. Cuts can exacerbate existing health disparities, just widens that gap in health outcomes.
It really shows how interconnected everything is. Which, speaking of connections, consumers research also looked at healthcare costs, financial stability, and SNAP participation. What did that show?
A pretty direct link, actually. The research suggests households facing higher out-of-pocket medical costs are more likely to participate in SNAP.
So health issues drive food insecurity and vice versa.
Exactly. It highlights how intertwined health and food security really are. Rising medical bills put even more pressure on affording nutritious food.
So what are the current USDA guidelines for SNAP, nutrition-wise? And how do these proposed restrictions fit in?
Well, the current USDA guidelines really emphasize a balanced diet, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean protein. moderating sugar, sodium, unhealthy fats, the standard advice.
Right.
These proposed restrictions, they're essentially a more direct regulatory attempt to align with those recommendations.
So moving from just advice to actual rules.
Kind of, yeah. Moving from guidance to actual limitations on what you can purchase with the benefits, it's a significant shift.
Interesting. A move towards more direct intervention. Okay, let's pivot slightly. AOL reported the U.S. House is considering increasing work requirements for food aid. How might that affect nutrition deficiency rates?
Yeah, this is a really critical point. Consumers research reminds us nutrition deficiency isn't just about not enough food, undernutrition.
Right, there's overnutrition too.
Exactly. Consuming too much nutrient-poor food. Low-income folks and older adults are often more susceptible to undernutrition. Overnutrition is more common, where calorie-dense, less healthy food is readily available.
Okay, so how do increased work requirements play into that?
Well, the concern is they could reduce access to food aid for vulnerable people who might face barriers to work age, disability, maybe just lack of jobs nearby.
And less access means?
Given the established link between food insecurity and nutrition deficiency, yeah, it could unfortunately lead to a rise in undernutrition within those groups.
That makes a lot of sense. If people lose aid, they're obviously at greater risk.
Yeah.
What are some of the common micronutrient deficiencies we actually see in the U.S.? And what health issues can they cause?
Consumers research mentions B12, iron, vitamin D, and zinc as being quite common.
And the consequences?
Well, lack of B12, which can be higher in older adults, and maybe some plant-based dieters without supplements, can cause anemia, neurological issues. Iron deficiency leads to fatigue, weaker immune system.
Vitamin D.
Crucial for bones. And zinc is vital for immune function, reproductive health too. So yeah, these aren't minor things. They can have significant impacts.
Definitely concerning. So how do current U.S. regulations try to prevent these deficiencies, especially for those most at risk?
There's sort of a multi-pronged approach. The USDA and FDA set recommended nutrient levels, right? And they mandate fortification of certain common foods.
Like adding folic acid to bread.
Exactly, like that. Plus, you have programs like SNAP and WIC, which are specifically designed to target at-risk groups and ensure they get access to nutrient-rich foods.
So there are safeguards, but maybe not always enough. Now, zooming out a bit, Consumers research also asked about the role of the whole food system, farm to table, in tackling nutrition deficiencies globally, too.
Yeah, this is where it gets really complex. Recent insights emphasize that our food system is this highly interconnected network.
Meaning?
Changes in farming, processing, distribution, even global trade. They can all ripple through and affect the nutritional quality of our food. So addressing deficiencies effectively needs a holistic, systems-based approach. It's not just about individual diets.
It's a much bigger picture than just what's on our plates. And speaking of specific diets, we often hear about potential B12 deficiency in plant-based diets. What's the science say on that risk?
The consensus is pretty clear, actually. People on strict vegan diets, maybe even some vegetarian ones, are at a higher risk because B12 is mainly in animal products.
What's manageable?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The good news is you can manage it effectively by regularly eating B12 fortified foods or just taking a B12 supplement. Regular monitoring helps, too.
Good practical advice. And have those food fortification programs in the U.S. actually worked? Are there any downsides?
Overall, yeah, fortification has been a big public health success. It's significantly reduced certain deficiencies, like adding folic acid to grains, huge drop in neural tube defects in newborns.
That's great. Any concerns, though?
There is sort of an emerging concern about maybe getting too much of certain fortified nutrients, like folic acid. In some cases, that might have unintended consequences, especially if you're low in other things like B12. So it's a balancing act that needs ongoing checks.
Definitely nuanced. Okay, let's shift gears. Francesco on MSN.com reported on a new Joint Nutrition Regulatory Science program from the FDA and NIH. What's the main goal there?
The primary goal is really to tackle the growing burden of diet-related chronic diseases in the U.S.
How? By teaming up.
Exactly. Combine the FDA's regulatory know-how with the NIH's research power. The aim is to advance our scientific understanding of nutrition, improve regulations, and ultimately create evidence-based policies for better public health through diet.
Sounds like a powerful combo. What impact do FDA regulations have right now on dietary supplements, their development and safety?
The FDA plays a pretty crucial role. They require supplements to be safe and labeled properly. But, and this is key, unlike drugs, supplements don't need pre-market approval for effectiveness.
So they don't have to prove they work beforehand.
Nope. But the FDA can step in and pull products if they're found to be unsafe or mislabeled. And given the huge number of supplements out there, over 50,000, used by maybe half of U.S. adults, that oversight is vital.
So it's reactive oversight, mostly.
Okay.
Now, turning to specific health conditions, what's the latest research on the link between nutrition and chronic neurological diseases?
There's emerging research suggesting a pretty significant connection. Poor nutrition can worsen the risks and outcomes for people with chronic neurological diseases, especially if they get an infection like COVID-19.
How so?
Studies indicate malnutrition can negatively impact how the disease progresses and how well someone recovers if they have a pre-existing neurological condition. Really highlights how fundamental good nutrition is for this group.
It's a stark reminder. Okay, on a more positive note, Consumers research looked at how agricultural innovation helps food and nutrition security nationally. What's happening there?
There was a really interesting study from China. While big, high-tech farms boosted food self-sufficiency, yes.
Oh.
But smaller, more ecologically diverse farms seem to offer greater benefits, like ecosystem services, resilience to environmental changes, and crucially, better nutritional outcomes.
So it's about finding a balance.
Seems like it. Integrating tech advancements with practices that boost ecological health. Not really in either situation to maximize both food production and health benefits.
A more holistic approach needed. What about AI? How's artificial intelligence being used in personalized nutrition?
AI is becoming a really powerful tool here. It can crunch huge amounts of data, diet info, health records, even genetics, to give tailored nutrition advice.
Tailored how?
Machine learning can spot patterns, predict how individuals might respond to different diets, paving the way for more effective, personalized ways to improve eating habits and health. AI can even monitor how well these plans work and help with regulatory efforts, too.
Like a super smart, data-driven nutritionist, what kind of guidance do the FDA and NIH currently give on balanced nutrition for different ages?
They provide evidence-based dietary guidelines tailored for different life stages. They highlight specific nutrients needed for kids' growth, adult maintenance, and preventing diseases as we age.
Is there one main resource?
Yeah, the Dietary Guidelines for Americans is the comprehensive one. Offers up-to-date recommendations for healthy eating across the whole lifespan.
Good to know there's a roadmap. Finally on this, what are the potential economic upsides of having better nutrition regulations?
Oh, the benefits could be huge. Better nutrition regulation could significantly cut the massive healthcare costs tied to diet-related chronic diseases, obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease.
Through prevention.
Exactly. Preventing these conditions could mean big savings in medical treatment costs, plus maybe a boost in workforce productivity because people are healthier.
That's a compelling economic case for prioritizing nutrition. Okay, let's turn to a specific business move. DebDiscourse reported Danone acquired Kate Farms. What's the significance of that in the plant-based nutrition market?
Well, it's a pretty significant strategic move for Danone. Really solidifies their position in the rapidly growing plant-based sector.
Kate Farms is a big player.
They've become one, since starting in 2012. They specialize in organic plant-based formulas for people with medical conditions, dietary restrictions. So this acquisition lets Danone seriously strengthen its specialized nutrition portfolio in the U.S. and tap into that growing demand.
Definitely signals a major bet on plant-based. What specific benefits do these kinds of plant-based solutions, like Kate Farms offers, provide for people with certain health issues?
What's notable is how they're often formulated for specific needs: malnutrition, GI disorders, food allergies.
Because they're allergen-free.
Often, yeah. Typically free from common ones like dairy, gluten, soy, so they suit people with sensitivities. And some research suggests plant-based nutrition might help recovery, nutrient absorption, maybe reduce inflammation for some people compared to animal-based options, especially those with sensitive systems.
Really valuable for those specific needs. Now, what's the latest research say about plant-based protein versus animal protein, especially for kids and teens?
There was a 2025 study looking at overweight and obese kids and adolescents. It found a link between higher animal protein intake and an increased risk of MAFLD, that's metabolic dysfunction-associated fatty liver disease.
And plant protein.
Conversely, higher plant-based protein intake was linked to a reduced risk. It really emphasizes that the source of protein matters. Suggests prioritizing plant sources, even partly, could offer metabolic benefits for young people.
That's significant. And how is technology helping people assess their plant-based intake and plan their diets?
Tech's playing an increasingly helpful role. We're seeing sophisticated systems using AI and computer vision to analyze meal content just from pictures.
Wow, really?
Yeah. These tools can identify foods, compare them to healthy guidelines, and give personalized recommendations. Super helpful for anyone on a plant-based diet wanting to make sure they're hitting all their nutrient needs.
Like a personal nutrition coach using AI. But what are the challenges for companies actually making these specialized plant-based products, especially for clinically sensitive consumers?
Oh, there are definitely significant challenges. They need to meet very strict nutritional requirements, be totally free of specific allergens, and taste good.
Sounds tough.
It is. Getting the protein quality right, hitting levels of micronutrients like B12 and iron, ensuring stability, it's complex. Plus, navigating regulatory paths for medical foods and often doing rigorous clinical tests.
Sounds like a very specialized field.
Yeah.
How has this growing consumer demand for plant-based stuff actually influenced what we see on store shelves and even in healthcare over the last decade or so?
The impact's been transformative, really. A huge expansion in plant-based options in grocery stores and healthcare providers, nutrition companies. They've responded with more specialized products for medical and wellness needs.
Driven by
Increasing awareness of health benefits, environmental concerns, ethical considerations. It's led to more new products, better labeling, just greater accessibility overall.
It's become much easier to find alternatives.
Mm.
Lastly here, what does research say about plant-based nutrition potentially helping prevent undernutrition in older adults?
A 2023 study on aging populations highlighted that while careful monitoring and individual interventions are key to preventing undernutrition in older adults, plant-based nutrition can be a valuable part of those strategies.
How so?
When plant-based diets are formulated thoughtfully, they can provide essential nutrients, maybe reduce some risks linked to high animal product intake. But the study stresses you still need regular dietary checks and monitoring of seniors' health to ensure their specific needs are met. Not a one-size-fits-all thing.
So, a helpful tool if used carefully. Okay, let's move to something often confusing. Food sensitivity tests. Helio discussed common myths around them. First, what are the basic principles of a healthy diet according to major health organizations?
Well, the FAO and WHO emphasize four main things. Adequacy, getting enough energy and nutrients without overdoing it. Balance the right mix of macros and micros. Variety, eating a wide range of foods. And moderation, limiting things like added sugar, salt, unhealthy fats. That's the foundation.
A good reminder of the basics. Now, what does the science actually say about these commercial food sensitivity tests? Are they effective or valid for guiding diet choices?
Current reviews indicate that many popular tests, especially those measuring IgG antibodies, lack solid scientific evidence. They aren't reliable for diagnosing sensitivities or basing dietary changes on.
So doctors don't recommend them?
Generally, no. Major allergy and immunology groups don't recommend using them for diagnosing food intolerances. They stress evidence-based methods like careful elimination diets supervised by a healthcare professional.
So the science isn't really there for many of these tests. What about specific advice for vegetarians or plant-based eaters? Any particular nutrients they need to watch?
Yeah, a 2018 study on vegetarian diets highlighted potential risks for deficiencies in B12, vitamin D, selenium, maybe some essential amino acids.
So what should they do?
The study recommends prioritizing specific plant foods known to be good sources like immature lima beans for certain amino acids, mushrooms for vitamin D, and it's crucial for vegetarians, especially vegans, to regularly include fortified foods or consider supplements to cover all bases.
Just needs informed choices.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk hypertension, high blood pressure. What's the latest research on dietary patterns and risk?
A 2025 study from the Regards cohort had some interesting, maybe unexpected findings. They found higher consumption of both alcohol and salads was linked to increased hypertension risk, especially in white females.
Really?
Yeah. But other common dietary patterns didn't show significant links in this study. It just underscores how complex the diet-heart health link is. Even seemingly healthy choices can have nuanced effects depending on the person.
Oh, surprising about salads. Highlights looking beyond just broad categories. Affordability is always huge with food. How does the cost of nutritious food impact people globally?
A 2024 global study showed affordability is still a massive barrier. In 2023, something like 40% of people globally couldn't afford a healthy diet.
That's staggering.
It is. And the research found that within most food groups, cheaper options often have a lower environmental footprint, but their nutritional quality can vary a lot. Really points to needing policies that support both economic and environmental sustainability so healthy diets are accessible for everyone.
A critical issue needing multi-level solutions. Now, gestational diabetes. What are the current strategies for nutritional intervention there?
A 2025 review stressed nutritional therapy is the first line of management. It involves individualized diet guidance, targeted micro and macronutrient supplements, even using things like probiotics and prebiotics.
So a comprehensive approach.
Exactly. That seems to offer the best benefits for preventing and managing gestational diabetes and potential complications for both mom and baby.
Sounds very personalized. Lastly here, how are researchers looking at personalized diets for hypertension? What role is tech playing?
There was a 2023 pilot trial testing a personalized approach. It combined mobile tech, analyzing metabolic profiles, metabolomics, and traditional low-sodium advice.
How did it work?
Participants got tailored counseling, used mobile apps to track intake, monitor blood pressure in real time. The goal is to develop more effective interventions by tailoring advice based on individual responses and using tech to help people stick to it and improve outcomes.
Fascinating glimpse into future chronic disease management. Okay, let's switch gears again, something more traditional. The Sydney Morning Herald on MSN.com highlighted old-fashioned items that can help food last longer. What are some examples?
It's pretty remarkable how well some old methods work. Consumers research mentioned things like glass jam jars with tight lids, clean cloth tea towels, unglazed ceramic crocks, even simple wax paper.
How do they work?
Glass jars give an airtight seal for preserves. Tea towels absorb moisture to keep greens fresh. Ceramic crocks are great for fermenting veggies. Wax paper protects cheese from drying but lets it breathe. Simple but effective.
Amazing how simple tools work. How do traditional methods like curing and canning actually keep food safe?
They basically create an environment hostile to spoilage microbes. Curing, usually with salt, draws out moisture that bacteria and mold need.
And canning.
Canning heats food in sealed jars hot enough to kill harmful microbes, and the airtight seal prevents recontamination. Both were essential for food safety long before fridges were common.
Real human ingenuity. Now, when using these home methods, what does research say about the safety of ingredients like salt or vinegar?
Recent research just reinforces using food-grade ingredients and following established safety guidelines, like using the right types and amount of salt for curing.
And for canning.
Essential to use approved jars and lids for proper seal prevents things like botulism. For pickling, getting the acidity right, usually with vinegar, is vital to stop harmful pathogens. Sticking to trusted recipes and techniques is key.
So follow the rules. What about potential health impacts of synthetic stuff in modern food storage, like some plastics, compared to these older natural methods?
Well, scientific literature has raised some concerns about certain synthetic chemicals leaching from some plastics into food.
Like what kind of concerns?
While there are safety standards, some studies suggest possible links to endocrine disruption, other issues with long exposure. Natural alternatives like glass, ceramic, generally don't carry those same chemical migration concerns, potentially making them safer for long-term storage.
Sounds like a benefit to going back to basics sometimes. How do these old techniques impact food waste and sustainability?
They can have a really positive impact on both. By extending shelf life significantly, they directly cut household food waste, a major environmental issue.
And sustainability.
They often reduce reliance on single-use plastics and energy-hungry storage like constant refrigeration, so lower carbon footprint. Embracing these methods can support more sustainable food practices.
Nice overlap of practical and sustainable. And it's not just individuals, right? What about social capital, community connections, shared knowledge in food security, and waste reduction?
Yeah, a 2020 review found strong social capital, those community networks, and shared knowledge does improve food security.
Oh, by sharing.
Sharing info on preservation techniques, even sharing the preserved food itself, it increases access, helps cut waste, supports vulnerable community members. It's about collective resilience from strong social ties.
Highlights the power of community knowledge. Okay, if we're using home-delivered meal kits and traditional storage, any specific food safety best practices to keep in mind?
Absolutely. A 2023 analysis of meal kits found that while general guidelines are usually there, more detail could help. Key things are always thorough hand washing produce well.
What else?
Promptly refrigerating perishables, being careful about cross-contamination between raw and cooked foods, and crucially, using a food thermometer to ensure everything's cooked to the right temperature. That applies whether it's a kit or from scratch using traditional storage.
Excellent reminders for everyone. Now, let's talk about what's in those modern packages. WRL discussed choosing healthier packaged foods. What are some recent packaging innovations aimed at health and being eco-friendly?
We're seeing some really innovative stuff. Smart packaging tech, battery-free, flexible, even autonomous systems.
What can they do?
Some have gas sensors to monitor freshness. Some can even release antimicrobial compounds to extend shelf life. Like, smart packaging has shown promise extending fish freshness significantly, aims to tackle both waste and sustainability.
Wow, packaging that actively keeps food fresh. How much does our behavior influence whether these innovations catch on?
Consumer behavior is critical. Our willingness to adopt them depends on how beneficial we think they are, how easy they are to use, maybe social trends too.
So ease of use is key.
Studies suggest user-friendly interfaces, like in apps providing clear info on freshness or sustainability, really drives satisfaction and adoption. The features the packaging enables that simplify our lives and give reliable info that's key to guiding healthier, sustainable choices.
Gotcha. Has to be practical and clearly beneficial. What are the broader economic impacts of this consumer-driven innovation in packaged food?
They're substantial. Smart packaging reducing waste means big cost savings all along the supply chain. Minimizing spoilage also cuts health risks and costly recalls lower costs for companies.
And for brands.
Plus, innovations matching consumer demand for health and sustainability can build stronger brand loyalty and capture more market share.
Sounds like a real economic driver. How can smart packaging specifically help with ultra-processed food challenges?
Well, it can offer benefits by giving real-time info on the food's condition, monitoring freshness, potentially slowing spoilage. It could help ensure packaged foods retain their intended quality longer.
Empowering consumers.
Maybe, yeah. Could help consumers make more informed choices, potentially reducing exposure to some less desirable aspects of ultra-processed foods.
Every bit of info helps. Now, what's recent research say about plant-based food innovation and cardiovascular health?
A 2025 Finnish study found that even partially substituting red or processed meat with innovative plant-based alternatives is linked to reduced cardiovascular disease risk.
Especially processed meat.
Yeah, the benefit was particularly strong when processed meat was replaced with veggies or mixed plant-based options. Over the long term, these shifts showed a clear positive impact on heart health.
More good news for plant-based options. What psychological factors drive us to eat ultra-processed foods anyway?
Recent research points to things like hedonic hunger, eating for pleasure, not real hunger. Also, tendencies towards food addiction, even just our mood.
So cravings and mood.
Kind of. People with higher hedonic hunger or more addictive-like responses are more likely to reach for ultra-processed stuff, often seeking quick sensory pleasure or a mood boost, which can undermine healthier habits long-term.
Complex interplay of biology and psychology. Finally here, how is deep learning tech being used for quality control in food packaging?
Deep learning, that subset of AI, is increasingly used to seriously boost accuracy and reliability in quality control.
How? Image recognition.
Exactly. These systems use image recognition to meticulously check that critical info on packaging expiration dates. Ingredients is present, accurate, readable, helps cut errors that could compromise food safety, protects consumers from mislabeling.
Smart use of AI for safety. Okay, let's move to a legal development. Men's Journal on MSN.com reported a class action lawsuit against Ziploc over food safety. For context, let's recap. What are food ingredients and how are they regulated?
Food ingredients are just the substances intentionally added to food. Regulations basically mandate listing all ingredients on packaged foods, usually by weight.
And then additives.
Yeah, things like preservatives, colors usually need clear identification. In the U.S., you have GRAS, generally recognized as safe. Europe uses E numbers for additives. It's all about transparency for consumers.
Got it. So we know what's intentionally added. But what about synthetic ingredients? What's the science say about their health effects?
Synthetics are man-made things added to preserve flavor, enhance color, texture, etc. While many are evaluated and approved, some studies over the past decade have raised potential concerns.
Like what?
Possible links to metabolic changes, allergies in some people, GI issues with long-term exposure. Regulatory agencies constantly monitor their safety and review new findings.
An ongoing process. Why are additives so common in processed foods? And how do we know they're safe?
Additives, natural and artificial, play key roles, extending shelf life, maintaining freshness, enhancing taste, appearance. Their safety is rigorously assessed by bodies like the FDA here, EFSA in Europe.
How do they assess safety?
They set acceptable daily intake levels based on extensive science. Additives deemed safe at those levels get GRAS status or E numbers, allowing their use.
So there's a framework. Now, how could the packaging itself impact ingredient safety? Thinking about this Ziploc lawsuit.
This brings up indirect food additives, substances not intentionally added, but that might migrate from packaging into the food during manufacturing storage.
So chemicals leaching from the plastic.
Potentially, yeah. The Ziploc lawsuit likely involves consumer concerns about chemicals in their bags and the potential for them to leach into food. Regulators do evaluate food contact materials, but research continues on chemical migration and potential health effects.
A potential contamination source we might not think about. Are there new technologies helping ensure food and packaging safety?
Absolutely. We're seeing more advanced tech like AI and blockchain being used throughout the supply chain.
Wow.
AI can predict spoilage, optimize storage, detect contamination risks. Blockchain can create transparent, tamper-proof records of where food's been, how it's handled, improving traceability, accountability, bolstering safety.
Tech solutions at multiple levels.
Yeah.
What do we know about how the public perceives food safety issues today?
Recent scholarly work using platforms like iFoodCloud gives real-time insights into public sentiment.
How does that work?
They aggregate and analyze online opinions, discussions, giving a dynamic view of what safety issues are top of mind for consumers, how they react to incidents. That data can be really useful for informing regulations and awareness campaigns.
Like a continuous public poll on food safety.
Yeah.
Lastly here, what are the potential health risks from allergic reactions, not just to ingredients, but maybe to packaging materials?
Research is still exploring this. Allergies to ingredients are well known, right? But there's also potential for reactions to chemicals in or migrating from packaging.
Is it common?
Widespread allergic reactions directly from packaging seem less common than food allergies, but regulators and researchers are actively studying and monitoring these potential risks to ensure the safety of all food contact materials, especially for sensitive individuals.
Good, it's under scrutiny. Okay, final topic. Broader sustainability initiatives. MyLifeXP on MSN.com highlighted countries pioneering green tech. Who's leading the way?
Several countries stand out. Denmark's a pioneer in wind energy. Sweden's made huge strides in carbon-neutral electricity. Germany's invested heavily in solar and wind.
And China.
China's become dominant in producing solar panels, electric vehicles, making massive investments in renewables and green infrastructure. These leaders often have strong government support, public-private partnerships, big R&D funding.
Encouraging to see that national commitment. What about recent tech advancements for reducing plastic pollution, a huge sustainability piece?
We're seeing exciting progress. Things like catalytic upcycling, breaking down waste plastics into more valuable chemicals, not just lower-grade stuff.
Anything else?
Also, better remote sensing image analysis to track marine plastic debris more effectively, crucial for targeted cleanup. But scaling these up globally and improving efficiency, still ongoing challenges.
Every step forward counts. Food waste is another massive global issue. What efforts are showing promise in reducing it?
Definitely impactful initiatives globally. The UN's Sustainable Development Goal 12.3 aims to have global food waste by 2030.
What strategies work?
Improving supply chain efficiency, robust food donation programs, widespread consumer education campaigns. France's ban on supermarket food waste requiring donations is a notable policy success.
Concrete policies make a difference. Now, green building blocks or GBBs, what are they and how do they help build a sustainable economy?
GBBs are essentially modular, adaptable tech solutions integrated into existing systems to mitigate climate change impacts and boost sustainability.
How do they work?
They enable a networked approach to innovation, connecting industries with available carbon-reducing tech. Some are broad, others specialized. The goal is accelerating the global shift to a low-carbon economy by making effective tech more accessible and easier to implement.
Making sustainable solutions more available and connected. What are the biggest barriers still facing global sustainability?
Unfortunately, substantial hurdles remain. Lack of strong enforced international agreements, conflicting priorities, economic growth versus environment, no universal sustainability indicators. Plus, the sheer complexity of natural systems and global institutions makes coordinated action tough.
Really underscores the need for cooperation and a shared vision. How do techno-economic analyses guide sustainable energy investments?
They're absolutely crucial. These analyses systematically weigh available resources, environmental impacts of different tech, and economic feasibility.
What do they tell us?
Recent studies even suggest smaller-scale, decentralized renewables might be more efficient and adaptable in some cases than huge projects. They give critical insights for policymakers and investors navigating the transition.
Making smart, data-driven investments. Finally, what's public opinion like in Europe on policies to reduce plastic litter? Does it influence policymakers?
Research consistently shows strong public support across Europe for policies to improve marine environments by tackling plastic litter big and small.
People are willing to pay for it.
Studies assessing willingness to pay show widespread support for a coordinated pan-European approach. This clear public preference definitely influences policymakers to prioritize marine litter efforts and invest in removal and prevention tech.
Good to know public opinion can drive positive change. Well, that was an incredibly comprehensive exploration. Wow, thank you for providing such insightful source material for this deep dive.
It's really fascinating, isn't it? To see that intricate interplay between our choices as consumers, the rapid tech advancements, and all the ongoing regulatory and policy efforts. All these things are constantly interacting, shaping our food systems, our health, and the environment around.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the ripple effect of even seemingly small daily decisions. So considering all these interconnected factors we've talked about today, from S&P rules to green tech potential, what single shift in your own habit will you take to create the biggest positive ripple effect? Definitely something to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.